Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Swire, the promo guy, your host for the show. My guest today is Gleason. He's an author, speaker, trainer, and coach specialist on verbal and nonverbal communication, confident and peak performance. Good morning, Al.
Good morning.
Hi. I want to ask you first question. You also known as the Curator of Nonsense. Can you tell me how you come up with that name and how does that translate to the type of service that you can help your client?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So I came up with Curator of Nonsense because I discovered that most of the success principles in life typically are not easily perceived by the senses, or they don't seem to make sense to people until they understand the principles. So that's why I came up with Curator of Nonsense. Basically, my job is to help things that don't make sense to people, the things that are nonsense, make them make sense is essentially what I do.
It probably be a lot of conversation right now because a lot of things around us right now are nonsense, But I'm sure that you're having a lot of good communication, conversation with our client. So our topic today is maximize your verbal and nonverbal communication skills. So we all know about verbal. Can you touch on a little bit about what is nonverbal communication skills?
Absolutely. So we do know a lot about verbal, and I would like to share a few things about that a little later on that maybe people aren't aware of. But on the nonverbal side, there are 9 different types of nonverbal communication that's always going on, and most people aren't aware of it. Things like eye contact, for instance, communicates something. When we used to be able to meet in person, the way you shake hands communicates something.
Mhm.
Uh, the clothes that you wear communicate something. So there's a lot of communication going on. Most experts agree that between on the low end maybe 60%, but up to 90% of all communication is non-verbal, and that's
Wow.
an area that most people are, for the most part, completely unaware of. So sometimes you can have difficulties communicating because your nonverbal communication is conflicting with the words that are coming out of your mouth.
Can you give us an example? Like, let's say if you're speaking in front of a group. So obviously, if I do that, I'll rehearse on my speech and I'll have my PowerPoint ready, for example. So, what are some of the nonverbal skills that people will be watching during the presentation?
Yes. Okay. So a simple example is maybe the pace of your speech, right?
Right.
Or your communication. So if you're talking really fast, that's communicating something. If you slow it down and you enunciate your words, that's communicating something else. Having a lot of nervous energy and looking around and not making eye contact, that's communicating uncertainty and unsurety and things like that. One of the big things now that we're in this, I'll say this Zoom world and video conference. I'm saying Zoom, but video conferencing, people tend to look down at the screen, right, instead of looking into the camera. If you
Hmm.
want to make eye contact, you need to look directly into the camera now. You can't look directly at the person. So, but if you're looking away, that's communicating something to your audience. So, just that's a simple adjustment that anybody can do today, and it'll make a big difference in all of your meetings and your communication when you're doing video conferencing.
Interesting that you mentioned that because right now we're having a live stream and I'm obviously looking at you at my monitor. If I look at you now, you can see my eyes looking up and my
Yes,
camera is a little bit beneath the monitor. So I do notice that, because I have, listened to speaker who normally talks really well in person. They're looking at everybody. They're making eye contact. People are nodding. It's kind of difficult in a digital world while you're basically talking to your monitor, and then the
absolutely.
other people they're kind of looking away, and then I feel that a lot of time good speaker lose interest of the viewer, in an online world. Are there any things that you would suggest besides the eye contact that you're just talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So the eye contact, just to touch on something else with that, uh, eye contact essentially is like a level of accountability. When people feel like you're looking at them, then they're less likely to look away. And so when you
Hmm.
talk about people who speak well in person but not so well during video conferencing, if they're not looking to the camera, people feel like they're not looking at them and they'll look off and start checking emails or Facebook or whatever the case may be. So that's definitely important. Something else that's a part of nonverbal communication is like your paralinguistics is what it's called. That is the tone of your voice. It's the pitch of your voice. So if I am talking to you like this, maybe I'm calm, I'm communicating one thing. But if I'm like Swire, and I'm yelling, right, that communicates something else. Uh,
Hmm.
so a lot of times people will get on here and they don't adjust that, important points, but maybe they should raise their voice a little bit to get attention, or lower their tone or their voice, their volume, so that it doesn't seem like they're yelling. People don't typically make those adjustments. And something else, if I am just monotone, I never adjust that, then that gets boring too. It's like the old movie where the teacher was like Bueller, Bueller. So that tends to happen in our video conferencing world as well. People don't adjust their paralinguistics when they're speaking.
Do you think it might be because of sometimes, we have technical difficulties, the type of setup that we have, the type of room that we're in, maybe we couldn't figure out the perfect setting as we present. Normally when we do in person, the host will probably have everything ready for us. We're all perfect looking, come out and knock out our presentation. But at home, maybe our internet, that day might be spotty. Maybe kids running around and maybe the mic is just not working well. So do you think technical difficulty will kind of contribute to the online presentation experience?
Absolutely. Technical difficulties definitely contribute. And I think one of the ways that it has the biggest impact is it frustrates the user who's having the technical difficulties.
Hmm.
Everybody knows that happens from time to time, but if you let that throw you off your game, you're frustrated. So then when you come on, you have a scowl on your face instead of smiling. You visibly look distracted, then that's going to affect your presentation. One of the ways I like to mitigate that is have your setup space where you do your presentations, where you do your work. Even though you're at home, you really need to create a office space if you don't physically have an office that you can do your work in. But then also, I know I have a lot of kids, right? I have 6 kids in the house.
Wow.
So when I am about to have a meeting, I do it just like I'm on a production set. I got to sign up on the door. I let everybody know, hey, I'm about to have a meeting.
Mhm.
I threaten them, you better be quiet. Uh, but I do those things so everybody knows, hey, dad is about to have a meeting. He's about to be on camera. We need to be quiet. So, and even just that little thing when the kids are aware, typically they'll be mindful of it and that you won't have the interruptions. So that takes a lot of stress off because the last thing you want to do is be on a meeting and there's extra noise coming in, especially if you're talking, right? If you mute,
Mhm.
then that's okay. Then that noise doesn't come through. But typically, you don't let anybody know you're on a meeting. You're unmuted trying to explain something, and then the dog runs by. The kids are yelling and screaming. They bust into the room that you're in, making noise. So I make the announcement to mitigate that, and then also, test your equipment. Make sure that everything is working properly. And if you don't understand how to use it, do a quick YouTube search or a Google search, and there's plenty of
Mhm.
information out there. This is definitely a part of our world now, and it will be going forward. So it's important to take a few steps to make sure you understand what you're doing. And if you don't, that also communicates something to everybody that's listening. You always have technical difficulties. That communicates that this is not important to you or that you're not savvy enough, which then that translates into your ability to get your job done. If people feel like, I'm not sure because he doesn't even know how to turn on the camera. You got to click one button. So,
Mhm.
so it all kind of builds. It's always communicating a message, right?
So I want to dive deeper. So assuming that we have the technical ready, and then obviously the communication skill in a virtual world when you're having conversation with client, is it different than normally where we have in-person communication? How would you advise them and coach them to change their mindset in communicating in a virtual world?
Well, again, I mentioned earlier that most of the communication that we have is nonverbal. With us being in this virtual environment, you miss a lot of those nonverbal cues that you would get in person. Especially as a presenter or a speaker, it's hard to really gauge the audience, gauge or the people that are listening to you, right? Because your eye contact has to be in the camera, so you can't look down at your screen and see what everybody's doing. You can't look out over the audience, and so it's important that you maximize the parts of communication that you can, right? So your dress, the way that you talk, make sure you know what you're talking about. You mentioned technical difficulties, setting the stage, right? All that stuff is important. And then, as you're communicating, it's important that you make sure you hit those, like I mentioned earlier, the tone, your paralinguistics. Make sure that the words that you're using is communicating what you want to say. Make sure that you are concise in your communication. That's something else. Don't get on and just ramble on.
Mhm.
Get to the point. Say what you need to say. Make sure that it's clear. Make sure that you get your point across. And so, there's something that I found that people typically just don't think about it, or they're not aware. But if you can say one thing in 5 words versus 15, use the 5 words. So those little tips help you be more effective.
How about, because I know speakers sometimes they feel on the crowd, right? So if I
Mhm.
am making a presentation, I see that people are nodding their heads, and when I make a small joke, people laugh, then I kind of, feed on by that energy. But right now, you are screaming at your screen, or you're just talking to your screen, and sometimes people are not responding. So how would we make it more engaging? So like you said, when you're presenting, we want to get people involved. We want to get people to participate. Then as a speaker, then
Yeah.
you will perform better. Do you agree?
Yes, absolutely. A simple way to do that, because it is difficult. You can't gauge the audience. You can't really feel the energy the same way. You can feel it though. So let me say that there is some feedback that you can get by being aware of facial expressions and what people are doing. But another way to get people engaged is to use the chat. Hey, if you understand what I'm saying, put one in the chat. And don't just make it yes or no. Get creative with it. If you all are having this challenge, put a hashtag in the chat. So that's one of the ways that you can utilize, utilizing the chat is one of the ways that you can get people engaged and see if they're paying attention. Because if you just say yes or no, that's easy. You can kind of mindlessly do that. But
Mhm.
if you say hashtag, most people aren't used to putting a hashtag in the chat. So that's one of the ways that you can keep people engaged and keep them alert, because they're not sure when you might ask them to do something and respond.
Yeah, because I've been to, you can really tell by, if they are embracing the technology. Like you said, I've been to a wonderful speaker when he present the information. So he will go about say, so type in the chat, what's your challenge right now with the topic? And then,
Yes,
or when the guest can remember something, whoever knows the answer, type it in. There's no prize, but then people are jumping in, then people are engaging. They are listening to your conversation. So I guess it's a put in different ways. It's a different way to present right now in the virtual world.
absolutely. And something else about this I want to mention, because it's virtual and people are at home, they tend to feel that it's not as important to do the things that you would do if you were in person. For instance, if you would normally go to a meeting, you would put on makeup and dress up, those types of things. I think that you should do it at home. It's important that you do it at home. A lot of times people, I feel like nowadays dressing up is something that's kind of frowned upon. People feel like it's uncomfortable. They have a million reasons why you shouldn't dress up. But one of the important things about dressing up is how it makes you feel. So just to give you an example, if you are going to, a fancy restaurant, some of them may not let you in if you have on, sneakers, let's just say.
Mhm.
But if you have on a suit and tie, you can get into that restaurant. And you think about, generally speaking, if you have on a suit and tie, you may be overdressed for some places, but you're always able to get access. Nobody will not let you in because you're not dressed appropriately.
Mhm.
Well, that affects your level of confidence. It affects your swag. And so it also affects how you communicate. So it affects you first and foremost. So if you throw on a shirt and you're still in your underwear, you don't have any shoes on, maybe you did put on some makeup or comb your hair because that part is visible, but the other parts you think that aren't visible, you don't address those, then it's going to affect your presentation. It's going to affect how you come across, because even though people can't see it, it makes you feel a certain way when you're half dressed and you got on house shoes. So that's something else. It's just a little simple tip, but if you do that, it'll affect you in a way that'll make you more effective during your presentations.
Yeah, so whatever that you're comfortable, whatever your lucky charm or lucky tie or lucky purse might be, put it on. So like you said, if you feel more comfortable, if you feel more relaxed, if you feel more quote unquote in the game, then
Yes,
your presentation is going to be better. But if I'm missing something, I'm not having my lucky pen, then I'm not able to do anything, then it's going to affect you.
absolutely, absolutely. And another thing with technology, make sure your environment looks good.
Mhm.
If you're doing it and there's dirty clothes in the background, you're in the bedroom, and if you need to be in your bedroom, that's okay, but it needs to be clean. Your area needs to look presentable, because that's going to affect how you feel, which in turn affects your presentation as well. Or invest in virtual backgrounds. Like I have a virtual background up right now. Invest in that. It affects how you feel and your level of comfort and your level of confidence when you present.
Mhm. I have a comment here by Dora. Obviously, we want to be keeping people engaged, and you and I actually was introduced on LinkedIn, so I wanted to, focus on LinkedIn. So you also mentioned that to keep people on LinkedIn engaged. How any tips of doing that for engaging people on LinkedIn?
I think one of the biggest things on LinkedIn is to treat it as networking, as engaging with business professionals, just like you would in person. I know myself personally, when LinkedIn first came out, I considered it another social media platform.
Hmm.
And if I got invitations, I would accept them, but rarely would I engage with people unless I knew them and had some type of personal relationship from face to face already. And even then, sometimes I would never engage on LinkedIn, but I would engage with them in person. If you treat LinkedIn just like, people on there like they're real people, just like you were meeting them in person, engage them, ask questions, offer solutions if they are asking simple questions, or if you notice something on their website or on their page. I think that is the biggest thing that you can do for yourself on LinkedIn, is treat people like they're actually people and not like it's a social media platform.
Yeah, because I found for my personal example, if I want to connect with that person, at least I'll take a look at their profile, maybe visit their website. If I know that they have certain accomplishment or certain paper, I will take the time to read that. And then
Mm,
when I reach out to that person, I'll normally ask them a couple of questions related to what they have done. So then the person will know, oh, okay, they're not just some robot sending out messages. This person actually took the time to look at what I have done, and then they really wanted to engage with me. So my chances of success is actually higher than if I use maybe some kind of technology and just blast out a lot of connection. Really.
absolutely. And I think a prime example is how we met. We met on LinkedIn. The person that introduced us, I engaged with her, she engaged with me, and then she was like, "Hey, I like this guy. Let me introduce you to somebody else." And so it definitely works when you engage with people and treat them like real people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any what was the most asked question about you as an communication expert for the past few months? Would you be able to give us some insight on how you're able to help people again in the virtual world or communicating in a virtual world?
Absolutely. Well, we actually hit on one, and that's just how to be effective because we are on camera, right? Instead of being in person. That's one of the big ones. I think another way is you mentioned being engaged. That's something else that people ask me about. Um, and then the other thing that I do talk to people a lot about is really just being aware of that, the verbal and nonverbal communication that's going on. I think that's the biggest thing because naturally in person, you're able to pick up on a lot of those cues. And when you're communicating virtually, that you don't have that kind of that automatic, because you're in the environment to pick up those cues. So you have to be very intentional. And I think that's the other thing that I've talked to a lot of people about and my clients about is being intentional how you do that. So again, some of the things that we hit on already, but the way you dress is critical. The way that you talk, your clearness and your conciseness is very important. Where you can tell jokes and shoot the breeze in person, that's not going to be as effective when it's a virtual situation. Um, Making sure that you engage people. We talked about using the chat. Those are some of the big things. Your environment, making sure you set that up. And so those are probably the main things that we talk about on the verbal communication side. Another big thing, and this is big whether it's virtual or in person,
Hmm.
but using filler words. Man, it's terrible to sit in the audience and hear a bunch of ums and ahs and well, like well, some people use those words like they are supposed to be used in those sentences and contexts. And I think over camera, doing the virtual meetings, teleconferencing and things like that, it's even worse when you use a lot of filler words. So that's a quick way to lose engagement and lose people. And another thing I'll mention is using what we call power talking, using
Okay.
power words. So don't say things like, "Well, possibly, maybe, we'll see, I'll try." Don't use those non-committal, weak words. If you're going to do something, commit to it and say, "I will have it done by X date. I will do this. I will take care of that." So that's something else that comes across really bad when you're using those low power words and filler words during conferencing.
Yeah, one thing I want to point out for myself, and I never noticed it, but since doing the show, I watched some of the show. When I talk, I
Hmm.
look away. When I talk, I don't know why. My eyes would scan left and right. I never noticed that. But then on camera, I know that every time that I talk, and
Hmm.
I
You're looking off.
look away. Something I do feel that by communicating in virtual world, there are pros and there are cons, just like
Yeah.
anything. As a small business standpoint, if you are able to, like you said, knock out everything in this rectangle,
Hmm.
you can impress a lot of people as if you would be a business 10 times your size. So right now we're communicating in this rectangle. It's a lot easier to impress, and that's something you can work on. That you could be conceived as big as company 10 times your size. So I think there are opportunities there for small business out there to set aside, especially if you are tech savvy, if you know what you're doing, or if you have the right help. I think it's there are some opportunities out there.
Absolutely. What you said, and I love the way you say it. Within this rectangle, right? We have the ability to be whoever we want to be, essentially.
Mhm.
And if you do, there are studies that show the way that you look impacts whether people believe you, and it also impacts or communicates to people that you're, I should say, it communicates to people that you're believable, and it communicates to people that you are capable. And so if you think about this rectangle that we're in now, if you dress the part, and a simple thing like investing in a virtual background or taking the time to set up your wall, put your plaques up, or decorate however you like, but taking the time to invest in that communicates that you are competent. It communicates that you're trustworthy. before you even open your mouth. As you mentioned, you can look like you're much bigger than what you are, but I think all of it comes down to your competence level and your trustworthiness, and all of it's communicated based on how you present yourself to people. Period. And so if you do that, you're going to set yourself apart. Most people still aren't doing that. So automatically, no matter what organization you're in, if you're an entrepreneur, business owner, you're going to stand out compared to most of the people that are on a video conference.
Great. I know that you also teach people to be more confident and help them to reach their peak performance. So maybe
Yeah.
I'll invite you to come on next time to talk about this. Hey Al, if the viewers want to find out more about what you do and maybe have some coaching done by you, how can they reach out to you?
Absolutely. My website is curatorofnonsense.com. So again, that's curator, Curator, OFNONSENSE.com. That's kind of a mouthful to say. You can also find me on LinkedIn. If you look up Curator of Nonsense or Al Gleason, same thing on YouTube. You can send me messages there. And then my email is al@curatorofnonsense.com. And for anybody that's watching the show, if you see the replay of this show, if you reference this show, I will offer a free 30-minute consultation just to give you an idea of some of the things that I can do for you and how I help people communicate better, have better confidence, and ultimately achieve peak performance in every area of their life.
Thank you so much, Al. A lot of good information, and thank you for the generous, offering for people who mentioned the show. So, reach out to Al, connect with LinkedIn, and thank you for watching the show. Thank you, Al.
All right. Thank you, Swire.
Thank you for watching the show. I hope you enjoyed the content. Since we started doing the Small Business Show, I've noticed better engagement with our target audience and increased interest in our services. As for the promo guide, I had the opportunity to be included as the feature cover story in one of our industry-leading magazines and have been invited to be on other podcasts as an expert of our industry. I truly believe developing and producing your own unique content via live stream and podcast is the way to grow your business in a new world. Let us help you to be an expert in your industry.